Coming up on this episode of the Mario Rosenstock podcast.
So you're sitting up in bed. There's a laptop, let's say. There's a couple of devices.
Laptop, 2 smartphones and an iPad.
And they're all open.
All open with different betting accounts.
And they're all in play.
Uh-huh.
You are betting money.
Literally.
Whose money?
Some of my own,
Yeah.
some other people's.
That you borrowed.
No, that I stole.
It's a subject that I have talked about a number of times on this podcast, and indeed in a couple of comedy sketches too. The scourge of gambling adverts. They totally rile me up. I don't know, something in me has had a problem about them since I first saw them. Not only did they kind of distort the whole sporting experience and turn it into a gambling game, it's very pernicious. I mean, it's a kind of a stealthy killer, as it were. You don't see the effects like alcohol addiction or drug addiction. A person can destroy their own life in the comfort of their own home, upstairs at 2 o'clock in the morning, sitting on their bed in front of a laptop, destroy their lives and destroy everybody else's lives. And I don't want to be too preachy about it, but I think we all know the kind of preponderance of gambling online adverts which keep people hooked into this. And I think the tide is turning, and I think everybody knows it is, and I think everybody knows it should. But anyway, my guest on this episode knows a lot about gambling companies and the kind of adverts I'm talking about. Pat Sheedy was released from prison just last August. He was in prison because of all the scams he pulled to make money to feed his all-consuming gambling addiction. It ruined his life. And he travelled from Limerick to Dublin to join me here in the studio to tell his story. We talked about how and why he started gambling and why he couldn't stop, the crimes he committed in order to feed his habit, his opinions on gambling companies, and life during and after prison, and lots more.
I remember the whole place was like hanging, waiting for my last one to see if it won. And next thing I was the centre of attention, and it was great. And the bet won, and everyone was clapping me in the back. And that was it then in my head. I said, this is how I'm going to make my living.
Yeah, the buzz was on.
The buzz was on, and it didn't go away. I'd give my own name, I'd give my own mobile number, I'd give my own email address. I knew I was going to get caught. All I wanted was to get the money, put on the bets, win enough money to repay them immediately, and then have more left. Rarely worked out that way. It will be very hopefully regulated and criminalised. The way these companies target people like me, it's nothing short of grooming as far as I'm concerned. And that might sound strong or severe, but it's nothing short of it. I'd done bad things, but now I understand why I did bad things. And for me, realising that I'm not a bad person is huge. I can wake up in the morning with a pep in my step, look at myself in the mirror and go, okay, let's get on with it. Up to the point where I went into prison, I just couldn't even look at myself.
This is obviously a fascinating story told very openly and honestly, and I think you're really going to enjoy my full chat with Pat Sheedy. But before we get to that, there can only be one story this week: the resignation of the bowled Leo Varadkar. And now Simon Harris looks as if he's going to become the youngest Taoiseach since Michael Collins, way back when, even younger than Leo. So listen, we got a hold of some of the Leo's voicemails. Some we couldn't publish, but you know yourself.
Hi, you've reached Leo Varadkar. Got you off guard, didn't I? Anyway, listen, if you want to leave a message, just do so after the tone, or some, favourable compliments or whatever. Be gratefully appreciated. Thanks.
Hi Leo, it's Miriam O'Callaghan here. Remember me? You bravely came out with me on Miriam Meets. Let's do it again this weekend. Let me press you against my bosom, metaphorically speaking, of course, genuinely, and you can reveal everything to me, all of your darkest secrets from politics, all of the back gossip, you know what I'm saying, those nasty guys, all the things they've been saying about you in Leinster House. Come on, let's do it.
Leo, it's Matt Cooper here.
And I'm Ivan Yates.
Yeah, and Ivan Yates.
Come
we know
on,
you've been
Matt.
getting a lot of calls and invitations
Come on.
to spill the beans on various radio TV shows. Could you come on this Saturday, please, to our podcast, Paths to Power? This podcast is the highest sponsored podcast in Western Europe. We got £1 million. Did you hear about that?
No, 2 million.
Actually, it's 2 million. Fair play to you,
2
Ivan.
million.
Anyway, you'd be the meat in a Matt and Ivan sandwich. Look, dish the dirt, spill the beans. Yeah? Okay, we're middle-aged men with a grudge to bear. 3 million in sponsorship. Ah.
So, back to the main event. When Pat Sheedy was in prison, he discovered creative writing. He started writing short stories for which he won a few prestigious awards. And he has just recently published his memoir, 100 to 1, 100 Convictions, €1 million. The devastating true story of a compulsive gambler. Pat has been doing a few interviews recently to promote the book. The first was on the Brendan O'Connor show on RTE Radio 1. Brendan put a few tough questions to Pat during the interview. And to soften him up and to get to know him and to loosen him up before we started the interview per se, we had a bit of crack about that before we kicked off our chat.
How's your mental health? So, like, you're affecting me now. Like, I'm
Pretty
actually
much.
no, I'm actually suffering now. So maybe you should be interviewing me now, Pat. Are we on, Ed? Jesus Christ! Like, I mean, and you thought you had problems before you were talking to him. You're going to need 6 months of rehab after you're talking to him. So the lowest point for you, Pat, came when the 18th minute of the interview with me, was it?
Sorry, I'm just talking to my guest today, Pat Sheedy, about the promotion of his book, 100 to 1, 100 Convictions, and €1 million. Pat.
More than.
Yeah, more than €1 million.
More than, yeah.
€1 million. Do you know what I want to do? I don't want to do this chronologically, right? I want to take a
Brendan O'Connor kind of little move here that I might do.
I might do the whole interview as Brendan O'Connor.
Okay.
You're from Limerick, like, you're off like fucking hate each other down there. Anyway.
I was going to ask you, Pat. So being serious though, right?
Yeah.
Paint a picture for me of the lowest point of your addiction. What were you doing? Where was it? I had a little brief encounter in the notes.
Yeah.
It was you were sitting up, I think, and
In bed at 4 a.m. with the iPads. I suppose
paint that picture to me. Tell me the time, what you were doing.
That would have been towards the end, before I went into prison. And say from 2015 on, my gambling really accelerated because of the whole online concept. You know, whereas up to that point, I hadn't been gambling for a few years and I was okay. But then when I went back at it in 2015, I had this, it's like letting a kid loose in a sweet shop. You know, that's the only way I can describe it. I had accounts with all the bookmakers. I had iPad, phones, laptop, and literally I can recall being in bed one night, just literally at 4 o'clock in the morning, gambling on shit that I knew nothing about. Like you're talking about basketball in the Far East, table tennis, literally cartoon, and I mean cartoon computer generated racing that had no logic.
Virtual.
To it.
Yeah, we've seen this for a few years now, 15 or years or so, virtual horse racing, where people are, I used to see people in bookie shops and they would be betting on between races, they would be betting on the virtual horse race.
Because there's a virtual horse race every 5 seconds in a betting shop.
So you're sitting up in bed. What time in the morning is it?
It's been 3:30, 4 o'clock.
4 o'clock in the morning. Is anybody else in bed with you?
God, no.
No, you're on your own.
Yeah.
You're sitting up. There's a laptop. Let's say there's a couple of devices.
Laptop, 2 phones.
2 phones.
Yeah.
Smartphones.
2 smartphones, laptop, and an iPad.
And they're all open.
All open with different betting accounts.
And they're all in play. And you are betting money.
Literally.
Whose money?
Some of my own.
Yeah.
Some other people's.
That you borrowed.
No, that I stole.
Okay. We'll go back to that.
Yeah.
How late in the day was that in your addiction? Very late.
What I'm discussing here with that was the end. Like the laptops and the online and the bed stuff. That was the end of it. You know?
Why was it the end?
Well, because I was scheduled for a trip to prison.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I ended up in prison.
When you say that, were you having one big blast off then before prison?
Everything was a constant blast off before prison. I had no life. Everything was just gambling. Where am I going to get money to gamble? When is this big win going to come in? Even if it came in, it didn't matter because I did have big wins. You know, I mean, it wasn't all losses. It wasn't all crying. But it didn't matter. It just did not matter at the end of the day.
How did you feel after a big win?
At the start, like when I was younger, when I was gambling, big wins were great. You know, you got a buzz, it was excitement. You'd go in, you'd go to a match with your friends, or you'd spend the money and you'd have a bit of crack or whatever. Towards the end, it honestly didn't matter whether I won big, lost big, or whatever. I was just going through the motions.
And what were you going to prison for?
I would have a long career of being able to manipulate people, shall we say, where I got them to part with money, businesses mostly. I would give people sob stories.
Just so people, this is a podcast, so it's for audio, but just so I don't mean to pigeonhole you or anything, but you are, if I may say, the last kind of person I would see as a manipulative bollocks. You are the definition of mild mannered.
Yeah.
You are polite, jocular, mild mannered. You have a nice, easygoing voice. You look kind of like, if I may say, trustworthy.
Which is why you'd probably
maybe,
let's just say I'm well able to tell a story, and I use that in the wrong way. I'm not proud of it. I'm not for 1 minute making light of it. There's a lot of people out there that would have been very affected badly by my actions, and I've had to live with the shame of that now.
Who did you affect with your actions? I mean, I presume you'll say everybody.
I affected people that I stole from, obviously. I mean, they were out of pocket or whatever.
But who were they?
Businesses mostly. Rugby clubs at the end. I took money off rugby clubs for match tickets that I pretended I could get and wasn't able to get. But also, apart from the people that I did take money from, I had a serious impact on my friends and my family. Gambling doesn't just affect the gambler, it affects a whole long line of people.
Trail of destruction.
Yeah.
Did you borrow money from friends?
Yeah.
That's not easy, is it?
Constantly. But I've mentioned this in my book, and I've mentioned it on other occasions about my friends. The one and only thing I've ever been lucky in life with are my friends. They've been my friends for 35 years more, and they know me better than I know me. And they stood by me, and they put up with a lot of shit over me. They had to defend me in pubs. They always had my back, no matter what. They wouldn't hold back in telling me what they thought of me when they met me or whatever, but they had my back, and I'd have theirs too. And I suppose that defines what a friend is, doesn't it? Because that was my thing all my life, was I had this craving for popularity. I always had to have the fancy suits and the car and the image and everybody loving me and all this kind of stuff. And as my grandmother used to say, a real fur coat, no knickers, like. And that's what it was, And it's only in the last few years that I realise now what's important to me in life and what isn't.
Yeah. And are some of those friends still your friend?
They are, yeah.
That's extraordinary.
Yeah. There's a gang of us, not a big gang, be half a dozen of us, but they know everything about me. They know me better than I know myself. And we've been through a lot together.
Wow.
And they've stood by me. And that's what life's all about.
Do you mind me asking? I'm just trying to find out some of the practicalities of this.
They're all gambling in Cheltenham, by the way, at the moment.
Are they? Are they? Yeah. So they like a punt.
Yeah, they love it. Yeah.
They like a punt. Yeah.
It's like I said, and that's what I was saying earlier. It's I don't want to make myself sound like a victim here because I'm a compulsive gambler. I'm not. 8 out of 10 people, 7 out of 10 people, whatever the stats are, can go and enjoy a bet. It's just
Is that the stats? Is it about 7 or 8?
I would say maybe around that. But it's just not for me. I'm just not able.
Exactly. Yeah. Tell me. I'm the kind of person, right? Now, I don't want to paint myself as a goody two shoes in any way. It's just the way I'm sort of built. Some people are built like this. I always feel mortified. I'd wake up in the middle of the night going, Jesus, I just remembered I owed Ed a £5. And I'd nearly go in and pay him back the £5 that night, that kind of thing. And not because I'm Mr. Nice or anything, it's because it would just gnaw at me. And I'd have a guilt about it. And so I just don't want to owe anybody money. And so I would find it very difficult to ask a friend for money. Because I'd almost draw the line. I'd go, I want our friendship to remain separate from the money so that we can talk to each other, but we don't have to have an edge that's involved. How do you borrow money from friends?
I wouldn't have borrowed very much from my friends, to be honest. But if I was ever really badly stuck, they helped me out. I'd never been talking about huge amounts of money or big, huge loans or anything like that. I mean, the support I got from them was worth way more than any money ever was. You know, I got the emotional support from them. I got the support from them. They had my back when I was in court. They had my back when I was plastered all over the newspapers for being a, you know, whatever. And, you know, when people would see me in the local pub and they start badmouthing me, they'd be the first to jump into my defence. That's the kind of, you know, that's what they give me, and you can't put a price on that kind of thing, you know.
You were so lucky.
Yeah, I am, yeah.
Yeah,
I am.
yeah, because I know another person who is a recovering addict.
Yeah.
But they're also a therapist.
Right.
And they're also a counsellor.
Yeah.
And they're very experienced.
Yeah.
And they told me about a process, because they had several addictions, and they told me about a process by which they had to retrace all their steps with their friends and go back knocking on doors.
Yeah, make amends, step 9, yeah.
Make amends, step 9.
Yeah.
And I said, how did that go? And he said, oh, quite a few of them said they never want to see me again. And I said, what did you say? And they said, oh, I totally understand. Of course I understand. I won't trouble you again. And it was very sad to hear that.
But they weren't his friends.
Yeah.
You know, that's the difference.
Yeah.
I would have considered myself to have had hundreds upon hundreds of friends at a time, because everybody was, you know, drinking with me in bars or in nightclubs or in bookies or whatever. I used to think everyone was my friend. They weren't. Yeah, they weren't. And anybody, no matter who you are in this life, I reckon, if you're lucky to have as many friends as you have fingers in one hand, you'll be doing really well.
I agree.
You'll be doing really well.
Of course you will. What about, would you spend a lot of your time thinking about which scams you could do to generate the cash, to get the...
No, I would have been very much kind of a spur of the moment kind of a fella, you know. And none of them were enormously elaborate.
Yeah.
And everything I did, I knew before.
Some of them you say here, they were harebrained.
Oh, ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean,
give us an example of a few of them.
Just... I suppose with the rugby tickets, for example, I just ring a rugby club pretending I had tickets. I'd give my own name, I'd give my own mobile number, I'd give my own email address. I knew I was going to get caught when I couldn't handle it. You know, I mean, I put no real thought into it. All I wanted was to get the money, put on the bets, win enough money to repay them immediately, and then have more left. That was the mentality. Rarely worked out that way, but that was the mentality, and that's a compulsive gambling kind of mentality, you know.
And you reckon you gambled much more than €1 million?
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah.
Conservatively, yeah.
Conservatively, yeah.
Yeah. That's between the money I legitimately earned, borrowed, stole, all combined. Like, I did work in a very well-paid job for over 20 odd years up here.
As?
I was the head of PR and media for an institute.
Okay.
So, you know, I would have had a good salary, shall we say. So.
Yeah, hence why I was able to glean kind of that you're well-spoken and mild-mannered. And do you remember your first bet?
I do. I remember it well. The first time I actually went into bookies wasn't to do a bet for myself, it was for my dad. And that was where I pulled a scam. In so far as he gave me 30 pence to put on a bet, and this is back in 1982 or whatever. And betting slips back then were like big, thick pads, like notepads, and you had a sheet of blotting paper under each page, and it was duplicated when you wrote on it.
I remember.
Yeah,
I used to go into betting shops myself.
So I wrote his docket out, but instead of the 30p, I just wrote it for 10.
Is that the place where they had the little pencils and the little red pens?
Yeah, even before then, even before then. So when I put on the bet for the 10p, I got back the little duplicate slip, and I just took the pen and changed it to 30, so he thought the bet was for 30 pence. Of course, the three of them won, and when he went in to collect it, he only got a third of his winnings, so there was hell to pay when he came home. But my first bet that I remember was I put a 50 pence accumulator on 4 horses, and they all won, one after another. And I knew nothing about the horses. Like, I knew absolutely nothing. I just liked the sounds of their names, or I heard lads talking about them in the shop or whatever, and I just wrote out the 4 of them, and one came in after the other. And I remember the whole buzz going around. Like, betting shops back then were like really small, pokey. They weren't the size of this room.
Smoky.
Yeah, no TVs, nothing, just a tannoy radio and a board marker, and lots of men just smoking. And I remember the whole place was like hanging, waiting for my last one to see if it won. And next thing I was the centre of attention, and it was great, and the bet won, and everyone was clapping me in the back, and it's a big hoo-ha. And even then I didn't understand the magnitude of it. Like, when I went up to collect it, she gave me like £51, which in 1984 for a 15-year-old kid, you know, go back to how much a pint was in 1984, it's like 20 pence. And
Yes.
you buy a packet of fags for £1. You know, all that kind of thing. 51 pounds. And that was it then in my head. That just summed it up for me. I said, this is how I'm going to make my living.
Yeah, the buzz was on.
The buzz was on and it didn't go away.
Yeah. What's the most bizarre thing you ever found yourself betting on and just going, what the hell is going on here?
Bizarre. I don't know. I wouldn't have really been one for bizarre or exotic bets. Like, I don't play cards for money. I could pass a casino if I had 10 grand in my pocket. It would never bother me.
Not the same buzz.
No, but I have a knowledge that I don't know how to play cards.
You said you didn't know how to do horses either.
Exactly. Yeah, but see, that's where the addiction has me. Like, I know nothing about horses, but at the same time, I thought my arrogance kind of led me to believe that I could, or that I did. You know, that's what addiction does to you.
Yeah.
Leads you to think that you're in control, or that you can, you have knowledge that you don't have, and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I didn't. Like, I know I can't play cards, so that's why I don't play cards for money. Even when I was gambling, in the height of my gambling, I'd never go play sitting in on big poker nights or anything like that. I might play an odd hand here for a couple of pounds, but you know, that'd be it. Because I knew that I didn't know how to play the game. But put me into bookies and give me a racing post, and I'd convince myself that I could read it inside out and understand everything and know everything that was going to happen.
Did you ever see a film called The Gambler?
Mark Wahlberg, is it?
It is.
Yeah.
So previously made by James Caan.
Yeah.
Early 70s. Terrific movie. And he plays a kind of a university lecturer. Very charming. Urbane. Well spoken. But he's got an absolutely rapacious gambling addiction. But he's clever enough as well to be able to intellectualize it. And it's based on Dostoevsky's book, The Gambler. And one of the things I remembered when I read the Dostoevsky book was that one of the things that Dostoevsky rationalizes through the main character is that the ultimate rush of gambling is to lose. That the liquidation of yourself is even bigger rush than winning. Because with winning, it's like you have to continue the game after winning because you have money, you have funds. But with absolute liquidation, you're kind of almost cleaned out. He also sort of said that this is a more theoretical, more of a sort of a funny idea. But he also said when you lose, it's the ultimate proof of everything you've already believed in all your life. And that is, I'm going to lose. Life is shit. I'm going to lose. Watch this. I'm going to lose. No, you won. I'm going to lose. But I'll lose. Life is shit. I'll lose. And then ultimately, you lose and you go, I fucking told you. I'm right.
Yeah.
So there's a kind of a theory there
Like,
as well.
no matter how much I won, and I did have big wins, like, and no matter how big the win was, I always knew I was going to end up giving it back to him within a day or two.
Yeah.
That was inevitable. Like, there was never going to be any ride off into the sunset, buy yourself a nice house and settle down for the rest of your life on that kind of... I knew that was never going to happen.
Pat, what's the progression like through an addiction of gambling? I mean, you know, like in Father Ted it would be, sorry, have you ever had a bet before, Pat? Never, Father. I'm having a bet now. And then he's just like immediately he's addicted. Yeah, but that doesn't happen in real life. It's a little more gradual, isn't it? No?
Depends on the individual, you know. I mean, for me, it got fairly hairy very quickly. Like, I remember I probably would have started gambling properly by the time when I was around 16. I started when I was around 14, but that would have been kind of intermittent. But by the time I was 16, it was in full flow. And by the time I was 18, I was in court. Mm-hmm. You know, that was where, you know...
For stealing?
Yeah. And that's where it took me. No, not every gambler breaks the law, and not every compulsive gambler steals.
But you had 97 convictions.
Yeah. No, of those 97, there are a fair chunk of them for driving with a mobile phone or not paying parking tickets and all that. They're not all for that. But that's not to say that I don't have a big list of previous criminal convictions, because I do.
Yeah.
I'm not minimising it.
Yeah.
You know.
Wow. So the addiction becomes, in your case, became fairly quickly advanced. When did you know, or do you know, like really know, that you've got a problem?
I suppose I really knew when I found myself in court in 1991, and a judge, basically I walked into court just thinking, sure, here we go, he's going to give out to me and I'll go home. He didn't. He locked me up for 15 months.
Oh.
And I had to get the guards to ring my mother to come down and pay bail money so I could get out that day. You know?
And that's when it hit the heart of your family.
That was the real beginning of the whole shame element that I was bringing on people. And that's when it all started to kind of hit home, yeah. After that, I went into treatment. I went into treatment fairly quickly in October 91. And I didn't have a bet for 12 years after I came out.
Wow.
Yeah. Because I did the things I was told to do.
And it worked.
Worked, yeah.
But to a point.
Worked to a point till my arrogance got the better of me again. And
what was a tipping point? Tell me how your arrogance got the better of you.
It was just time. It was, my belief that I'm better than it, or that I can control it, or that I'm intelligent enough not to let it get the better of me.
Hubris.
Yeah, got me like that. And again, I'd say...
Can you remember around that time, your first bet, just around the time that you thought you had it beaten?
Yeah, I remember the very first bet I put on. It was like, Jesus, it was like my betting around 1991 when I stopped would have been maybe 20 quid in a horse or whatever the case may be. I remember the first bet I put on was 150 quid straight away. And like I had 12 years of a good job in Dublin under my belt. I had good savings. I had everything built up. That was all gone in a matter of months after going back.
Yeah. Wow.
You know.
How do you feel about telling this story?
Now I feel okay. And I hope that everybody that hears it is suitably appalled and shocked. And I don't care what they think of me, but I would like to think that it might make them think about what gambling is as an addiction. You know, because the public perception up to very recently was that, sure, why can't you just give it up? You know, there's no, you're not getting a chemical high off of it or anything. My arse, you're not. It's you know, it's without a doubt the most insidious and dangerous of any addiction, I believe. Because it will get you quicker, it will destroy you quicker, and it'll destroy a lot of people around you a lot quicker. And
it destroys you with stealth.
Yeah.
It doesn't destroy you with collateral damage to your face or your voice.
If I was an alcoholic, I'd drink a bottle of whiskey a day, 20 quid a bottle, 7 bottles a week, 140 quid. I wouldn't have sneezed at 140 quid in 5 seconds when I was gambling.
Plus you liquidate your whole family and your friends.
Liquidate your family, your friends, your reputation, everything.
Okay. You may not know this, but I have a particular dislike for the relentless, persistent online gambling advertising on television and radio. I'm not a big blowhard. I'm not a crusader type of person, but I do have a lot of people in my family who gambled. Wouldn't say that they were they wouldn't say that they would have the extent of the issues that you had. But I've seen these gambling ads, and I've seen stories like yours, and Tony 10 was another one I'm sure you're aware of. Declan Lynch did a book with him. Yeah. And it's vile, really, because it's tapping into a kind of a masculine testosterone, a youthful masculine testosterone, which we all know as males we have testosterone, which heightens our ability to take risks. Yeah. And it's capitalising on that, and it's
disgusting, is what it is. It will be very hopefully regulated and criminalised. I've been speaking to the gambling regulator about it. The bill is in front of the Dáil at the moment. Should be passed by late spring, and the sooner it's passed, the better. Because the way these companies target people like me, it's nothing short of grooming, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. And that might sound strong or severe, but it's nothing short of it. At the height of the tobacco advertising campaign, you were never seeing John Player Blue saying buy 20, get 100 free. You know, that kind of thing. You never saw that shameless level of promotion. Same with alcohol advertising. You know, Heineken aren't saying buy a pint, get 10 free, are they? You know, they're not, because they have a social responsibility about how they promote their products.
You were being offered stuff as well, weren't you?
Yeah,
tell us about that
endlessly.
Side of it.
Yeah, you know, if you ever tried to take a break or you weren't depositing money into an account, you get an email offering you couple of £100 here, a couple of £100 there, free bets. You decline that long enough. I went to Grand Prix, on the back of.
Did you?
Yeah, on the back of my gambling. That's how valued a customer I was, shall we say. And that's the kind of stuff that keeps you pulled in. That's the kind of stuff that keeps you coming back,
It's truly horrific.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And like I said, and I may, like you're saying, you're not a blowhard. I probably well am, and I hope I am. But I will climb on any soapbox and discuss the whole advertising and what I call shameless promotion of the industry. That's harmful and dangerous.
A man I know, and a man who's known to a lot of people in business, and who's made a number of appearances with Matt Cooper, is a guy called Stuart Kenny, and I'm sure you'd be familiar who Stuart is. He was one of the founders of Paddy Power.
He's on the other side of the fence now.
And now he's an active advocate for this, against this kind of thing, and fair play to him for doing that. And we need more people from his side of the fence, I think, to come out.
Yeah, but they won't even sit and discuss things like that with people like me. They think it's okay just to put a little sign, gamble responsibly, at the end of every ad, or have Ruby Walsh do one ad in 50 saying be safe when you're gambling and all this. That's a crock of horseshit, excuse my language. It doesn't just add up to me,
They won't engage.
No, they won't.
Why not? I mean, I understand ultimately why not, but why won't they be seen to engage with you? Maybe that would be good for their PR.
Of course it would. But they don't seem to see that, do they? I pulled a scam years ago on a bookmaker where I got a heap of betting vouchers from someone who I won't name, and they took me to court and they got me a prison sentence for that I had to appeal and go through the. So it's okay for them to poison me, but it's not okay for, and again, I'm not feeling sorry for what I did there was wrong and I deserve to whatever, but there's just a whole heap of double standards around the whole thing. They have no social responsibility or ethics whatsoever as far as I'm concerned. None. The CEO of Flutter has been interviewed recently where he completely disregarded gambling as an addiction. Completely disregarded it.
Did he?
Yeah.
How?
Just disparaging comments. Didn't believe statistics. Doesn't believe that there's a certain amount of compulsive gamblers out there. It's there. It's black and white. How is his company turning over the type of money he's turning over, unless there are people out there throwing away money?
Yeah.
We can't all be JP McManus's and make a career out of it. So it's people like Flutter, it's people like Paddy Power, like Ladbrokes, like Boyle Sports. They all need to be held accountable, and hopefully this bill will hold them accountable, because they've got a duty of care going forward to children, as far as I'm concerned. I started when I was 14. I had no knowledge of gambling. Today, I would hate to be starting out as a gambler at 14 years of age with what's available there today.
They've got the artillery.
Oh, it's Jesus.
You haven't a hope.
No.
They're getting beep, 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 little alerts everywhere.
Yeah. And you've got kids that don't understand sport anymore. They don't understand, they just understand who's doing well at sport by the price a certain player is to score a certain goal or whatever. Yeah. That's how they identify.
Yeah, that's another point actually.
Fantasy football.
That's another point.
Everything.
Games are, some sport in essence is being a little bit tarnished by this, because you're watching a game of football between two teams of 11 players, and you're unaware that there are hundreds and thousands of people betting on the amount of corners that there are going to be in the next 5 minutes. This kind of madness, it's being turned into this kind of fandom, and sport has been turned into just an opportunity to capture this risk gene that boys have.
It's not even boys. I remember I'd be a big sports fan, and I remember I waited 45 years for Limerick to win an All-Ireland hurling final, and I went in 2018, and I didn't enjoy 1 minute of that game because I had so much money invested in it. I can't even remember watching the match properly because I was just worried about who'd score what and when, and
ruined. Yeah,
totally ruined. Probably what should have been one of the best days ever, sporting wise, for me.
Well, thankfully, there have been more of those
There
days
have,
frequently
yeah,
in the
there
last
have.
5 years now.
And another one to come this year, hopefully. So.
You're a proud Limerick man, are you?
Very much.
Is Sheedy a Limerick name?
No, my dad was from Clare, next door.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's Sheedy's in Clare, Tipperary, all around that area.
Yeah. You said to me, just as we were starting the interview, that you found it very exhausting at the beginning, talking on microphone about this sort of stuff.
Yeah, I did. I did. I suppose it was probably the levels of it that I was doing. I had done, like I did in the first week, I did maybe 3 or 4 of these, and I was on Ireland AM and that kind of thing as well. And people ringing you up going, Jesus, I saw you on the telly, or I was reading about you in the papers, and going, yeah. I
know.
Yeah.
Look, when I'm out promoting something, right, and obviously it's nowhere near as serious or important as you, I'm not only exhausted at the end of a week of interviews, I'm emotionally drawn as well, because there's a kind of a confessional aspect to the whole thing. Talking about yourself basically is exhausting. You're pouring yourself out into with another person, and it is quite exhausting. Now, are you doing counselling at the moment and therapy? Is that an ongoing thing?
I still go to my Gamblers Anonymous meetings every week. I will still be in contact with counsellors if I need to speak to them. I work with a couple of organisations that are working around people who have addictions, people who are in prison, that kind of thing. So that kind of keeps me clued in and keeps me focused on a daily basis.
Do you help with the counselling yourself, or do you seek to become, or on that side? The reason I say that is because the
best counsellors the best addicts make counsellors.
True, and I had the 2 Norries on the podcast, one of my first guests.
Well, I'm doing a thing in UCC next week with Timmy.
Ah, very good.
Yeah, I know the lads well. Yeah,
Timmy and James.
Yeah,
and I had them on my podcast, and every other interview they'd done before me was like.
So now we're joined by, Timmy and James. How bad was it, lads? Like, Jesus, like, really, did you kill people, like?
And they were there, like, no, Timmy and yourself, like, right? So then I took the piss out of the lads, and then Mario, like, can I just say we're really, really happy that you fucking took the piss out of us, because this thing is so dark, like.
It is dark.
It needs to be lightened up, like.
Yeah, and that was the reservation I had with you coming on, because I'm not a funny guy and you are, and I'm kind of going, I hope he doesn't expect me to be funny here, because my life has been pretty dark,
Yeah.
And
I think you get the tone of it.
Yeah, and it's great. It's great.
Yeah.
It is. It's
lightens it slightly.
Yeah, it is, because it is serious. But at the end of the day, it's done, and I can't change anything that's happened before.
Yeah,
I can't. But
Have you lost weight?
I did. Yeah. I did. I one of the byproducts of being a compulsive gambler for me was through depression. I became very fond of eating shite. I would binge eat a lot. I would have binge ate a lot. I was in prison about 3 months, and it was during a COVID lockdown where we were just like behind a door. We weren't allowed out of cells at all for a long period of time, and I just didn't feel good, and I didn't know what it was. And next thing, I woke up with a crowd around me, literally. I just keeled over in the shower, and doctor came down and told me that I was diabetic, and that unless I did something about myself, I wouldn't be leaving prison. I'd be gone out of the door in a box. And he was very serious. I liked this doctor. I kind of, he wasn't one of these alarmists. I believed him because I didn't feel good. And I had to remember as well, I was 29.5 stone going into prison. Like, I was a fucking elephant. So yeah.
That's really big.
Yeah.
You're an average size man?
No, yeah.
No, but height-wise?
Oh, yeah, 6 foot, yeah.
Yeah, 6 foot and 29.5 stone, massive.
Yeah. So, yeah, I had to do something about it, and I figured, look, there's 2 things I planned on doing after that point in prison was to get my degree, maybe write the book, because that was something that I said to myself going in. I've got a lot of time on my hands now.
The book is called 100 to 1, 100 Convictions, €1 Million, The Devastating True Story of a Compulsive Gambler. What's the form of the book? How does the book, what is the theme of the book? How do you tell the story in the book? Is it chronological?
Start out basically with the morning of me going to prison. I just described what was going on in my head that morning as I was waiting outside the court to be called in, and then the judge sentencing me. And then I just started from the beginning, basically, as far back as I could remember with relation to things that went on with me as a kid.
What happened with you as a kid?
Look, I would have had a very normal childhood, you know. But I had huge self-esteem issues around the fact that I had a big roaring head of red curly hair and freckles and had to wear glasses. And I grew up in a working class area, and there was a lot of kind of rough, tough kids there, and, you know, I got slagged a lot over it, and I took that to heart, you know, rather than
get over it.
Yeah, I used to pretend it didn't bother me, but it did bother me.
Yeah.
And that was kind of shit that I kept in all the time, and I internalised everything.
Yes.
And it just kept building and building and building. And, you know, that's what I actually looked at in prison with Nolene. She was the addiction counsellor in Portlaoise, and she was the one that made me look at all of this kind of stuff and made me go back over it when I was writing the book and write about it and read it back to yourself, and you go, Jesus, you know. So, like, the cathartic element of the book was incredible.
Was it?
Yeah.
Did you
Recommend it to everyone. Even if you never bother trying to get it published, write yourself a book about yourself and read
It's
it.
like a diary, yeah.
Yeah.
Did you write it in longhand or on a computer, or
Mostly on the computer in the school.
how long did you write it? How long did it take you to write it?
I was in Portlaoise nearly 2 years, and I didn't finish it in Portlaoise, but I did most of it. So, yeah. And I have to mention the teacher in the school there, Shauna Gilligan, that taught me the whole creative writing process and all that. Incredible. Absolutely amazing.
I mean, people give out all the time, rightly so, I think, about the custodial prison system in Ireland for a number of different reasons, most of which I'm not remotely qualified to go into, but I do hear the arguments. But you're not the first person to kind of almost imply that it saved your life.
Without a doubt.
And so that it should be applauded for that.
Should. Yeah. I got a degree in prison. I was forced to look at myself physically. I did all that, and I wrote a book, and yeah, it is what it is. You know, you can go into prison and feel that you have to be a hard man and you have to conform and you have to be seen to be this or you have to be seen to, or else you can just put your head down and look for a bit of help and help yourself.
Yeah.
And if you do those things, you know, you'll
Were you a proud person?
Yeah, I would have been. Yeah. In what way?
I mean, for people who are stubborn and prideful,
Yeah.
it's very hard to ask for help. Because
Oh, yeah,
because for people like that, it's an admittance of weakness.
I would never have done that outside. I would never have asked for the levels of help that I asked for and got in prison outside. No, I wouldn't have done it. You know, I can honestly say I wouldn't.
So you found allies, helpers, and people who understood you in the system.
I did.
Wow.
Yeah, I did.
That's an amazing thing to say.
Yep, it is. Yeah, it is. And I met other prisoners during the course of my time in prison. There's a lad, and I put a dedication to him in the book, Paul O'Rourke. At the start of the book, Paul passed away last Christmas, and Paul was finishing his sentence just as I was starting mine, and I just found him to be the most amazing inspirational character. A lad from Cork, had a really tough life, and he turned everything around, and I used to get a great buzz out of seeing him every morning and talking to him, and he gave me a lot of encouragement, you know. Like Shauna in the school, all the other teachers in the school, I got nothing but praise and encouragement. Prison Service have an arts officer called Tom Short. He's Pat Short's brother. And Tom's an amazing guy, you know. He helped me, you know. He brought me, I was the first prisoner to ever go to the Listowel Awards Festival while I was a prisoner to receive an award.
Yeah.
Did that. Tom does a lot of work with artists. He's got a big art exhibition starting next week in Tala in the Rua Red Theatre, Red Rua outside. Eddie Cahill, brother of the General, Martin Cahill, he's curating it. Eddie learned to write in prison. Or not to write, sorry, Eddie learned to paint in prison. You know, I learned to write in prison. Other guys learned to do different things. Prison can be a great training ground. If you decide that that's what you want, but you have to decide it's what you want.
You're 55.
Yeah, just 55 now.
55. I mean, you don't look it. Maybe it's the big bushy curly red hair.
Maybe.
It keeps
And the
you
glasses.
young. Because red hairs don't get older looking so much because their hair stays the same.
Well, it usually falls out or goes grey, so I'm...
Well, it goes sort of slightly tinty. But actually, when you get older, you lose the gingerishness because it gets a bit grey.
Yeah.
So you just get more handsome as you get older now, Pat.
What can I say?
Yeah. And one of your messages would be that it's never too late to change.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But keep it in check. Like, I will never... When I went to 12 years without gambling, I thought I had it under control. I thought I had it beat. Even the second time where I went 5, I thought, I'm on top of this. I'll never, ever say that again. I can't.
Yeah.
So, you know.
The comparison with the tobacco industry is inescapable.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Because gambling will kill you as well.
Yeah, it will.
I've known people that are dead because of gambling addiction.
You do?
I do, yeah. And I'll know more people that will die because of it.
And when you say they're dead, is some of that suicide?
Yeah.
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 It's just so obvious, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's going to put you in a place that you feel you have nowhere else to go.
Financially, physically, every way.
And emotionally and
It will take-
and self-esteem.
And it just keeps taking and keeps taking and keeps taking. And that's why I have such an issue with these companies. That they do this without remorse. They do this and just don't care.
What did you learn about yourself, Pat? And what I mean by that is, what did you learn about who you are or who you were or who you came from as a person?
I learned that I'm no better or no worse than anyone else. Whereas there was a lot of times where I thought I was a lot better, and there was a lot of times where I thought I was a hell of a lot worse. I've learned that I'm normal. I've learned that I'm very flawed, but I learned that I'm not a bad person, which I always thought I was. You know, I'd done bad things, but now I understand why I did bad things. And for me, realising that I'm not a bad person is huge. I can wake up in the morning with a pep in my step, look at myself in the mirror and go, okay, let's get on with it. Up to the point where I went into prison, I just couldn't even look at myself. You know? And the river looked important and inviting to me too that morning I was walking into court. I can tell you. You know, it did, because I knew where I was going that morning. Like, I knew I was getting locked up. So, yeah, life's what you make it.
Wow. I think that's one of the nicest things I heard you say, that I realised I'm not a bad person. And I know you said that with you were categorical about that, because there was a lot of self-hatred going on and self-loathing.
Huge, yeah.
Amazing stuff. Okay, I won't revisit Brendan O'Connor on you there now. So,
Look, he was fine. It was my first
well,
interview,
and he's a very intelligent man, and
Yeah.
he actually is very good on these subjects.
Yeah.
He's because he's very thoughtful.
Yeah, and it was tough, and it was probably something that I needed to do. You know, it was my first time being hauled over the coals, and I suppose the fact that it was live and all this kind of stuff, and yeah, I mean, I remember coming out of the studio and I just looked at my phone and I had like 15 text messages. Are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay? Jesus, that was tough. Are you okay? I go, oh, good hell. I didn't think it was that bad at the time. Then I went and played it back and I listened to it and I thought, oh my God.
Did you have anybody contacting you after the interviews going, Pat, what the fuck? I never knew this about you.
Nah,
Everybody knew you.
Everybody that knows me know me, you know. Yeah. I have had friends that I actually got a message off a friend of mine yesterday that read the book, and she just said to me, and I know this girl really well for a long time, and she just said that she was really proud of me, but she didn't know the levels of half the shit that I was in or got up to. And it was nice to get that message, you know. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Life looks good.
Yep. Today it looks good.
Today it looks good. Yeah. I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. Pat, thank you very much for exhausting yourself once more and
Pleasure.
and sharing your incredible story with me, and I wish you nothing but happiness.
Thanks.
And my thanks to Pat Sheedy for coming all the way up from Limerick to tell me his true and fascinating story. My thanks to you for listening to this podcast. Have a great week next week. We're off on the Good Friday, so we're going to do a repost next week. Get in touch with me if you want to, mariorosenstock@gmail.com, with any suggestions, constructive criticisms, ideas for guests, ideas for sketches. Always welcome from you, my listeners. And please tell one other person, if you can, about this podcast. See you again in about 2 weeks.